Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
You ever realize you're just optional? Not hated, not loved, just there when it's convenient? Yeah, that was me. Until I decided it wouldn't be anymore. For most of my adult life, the holidays felt like a stage where everyone else had a part, a costume, and a spotlight, while I stood somewhere behind the curtains, holding everyone's coats. I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but it's hard not to notice when you're always the last one told, the one who gets the leftover place setting, or worse, no setting at all. I remember the first time it really hit me. I must have been in my mid-20s, newly moved out, still figuring out how to balance rent and ramen. Emily, my older sister, perfect hair, perfect house, perfect goddamn family, was hosting her annual Christmas bash. And by annual, I mean the kind with matching pajamas and stupid white elephant games that somehow cost everyone $50. I got the invite the night before. Literally. One text, "Hey, if you're around, we're doing Christmas Eve at ours. Bring wine if you can." No, we miss you. No real warmth. Just an afterthought, like I was a plus one to my own damn family. Still, I went. I showed up with a $20 bottle of red and the kind of smile you wear when you're too proud to admit it hurts. I stood around while Emily's friends talked about their kids' private schools and ski vacations, while my mother acted surprised I could afford to show up at all. "Oh, you look nice, Rachel," she'd said, eyes scanning me like a coupon for expired milk. I laughed it off. I always did. But this year, something was different. Not in the fairy tale kind of way. There wasn't some big explosion or fight. No tearful argument or drunken scene. No, it was much quieter than that. It was the silence that finally got to me. I'd been waiting. Not passively, not helplessly, but waiting all the same. Watching the calendar move toward December, wondering if they'd do it again, wondering if maybe this time they'd remember to actually treat me like I belonged. I saw Emily post a story on Instagram. A boomerang of her and her kids stringing lights. My mom commented with heart emojis and something about "can't wait for our big night." I waited another day. Then 2. Then 5. And when December 18th came and went without a word, I finally texted my mom. I kept it simple. "Hey, what's the plan for Christmas this year?" Her reply came back in under a minute. Like she had it ready. "Oh honey, we just assumed you'd be busy." That was it. 10 words. Not even a sad face. Not even a question mark. Not even the dignity of a damn excuse. Just that cheerful little lie, packed tight in a fake apology. "We just assumed you'd be busy." Like I was the type to be too in demand to spend time with my own family. Like it was my job to chase after them again. I didn't respond. Not right away. I stared at that message like it had insulted me in 5 languages, because honestly, it had. It wasn't just a brush off. It was a goddamn verdict. It was years of feeling invisible wrapped in a neat little shrug. So I did something I'd never done before. I opened a new tab, searched for last-minute holiday vacations, and clicked the first link that didn't make me gag. It was a luxury cruise line with an obnoxiously shiny website, all palm trees and infinity pools. I scrolled through the photos, white sand, cocktail bars, live jazz at night, and something inside me whispered, "Why not you?" I booked the trip. No hesitation. Balcony suite. Single occupancy. Paid in full. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I didn't want their opinions or their guilt texts or their fake surprise. I just wanted out. Out of the cycle. Out of the goddamn waiting room of their affection. And let me tell you, clicking that confirmation button felt better than any Christmas I'd had in the past 10 years. I started packing that night. A couple of dresses I hadn't worn in years, the red heels I'd always saved for someday, and enough sunscreen to survive the apocalypse. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. Like the fog of trying to earn their love had finally lifted. Because here's the thing. When someone forgets you once, you call it a mistake. When they forget you twice, you start to wonder. But when they do it year after year, with the same blank expression and the same empty excuses, that's not forgetfulness. That's a pattern. That's a decision. And that year, I decided I was done being the afterthought. Let them clink their glasses and pose in front of the tree. Let Emily have her perfect, curated Christmas. I wasn't going to be the invisible guest this time. If they could forget about me so easily, I wondered how long it would take them to notice I was gone. The moment I stepped onto that ship, I felt something shift inside me, something quiet but powerful, like the first deep breath after a storm has passed. The scent of salt and expensive perfume mixed in the air, the hum of excited voices floated around me, and the polished floors gleamed under soft, golden lighting. This wasn't just a vacation. This was an escape, a deliberate and calculated act of rebellion against years of being overlooked. I wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. I was here to enjoy myself, to indulge, to take up space in a world where no one had decided I was optional. I made my way to my cabin, and as I stepped inside, I let out a slow breath, taking in the view from my private balcony. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, vast and untouched, a reminder that life existed outside of my family's dismissiveness, outside of the quiet rejection I had swallowed for so long. I didn't unpack right away. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the complimentary champagne, kicked off my shoes, and let the warmth of the setting sun kiss my skin. This was mine. This moment, this freedom, this choice. I had taken it, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel guilty for it. That first night on the cruise was everything I had needed for so many years, but had never allowed myself to have. I dressed in a sleek black gown, the kind that had been gathering dust in my closet for years, waiting for some special occasion that never seemed to come. I let my hair down, swiped on red lipstick, and stepped into the grand dining hall like I belonged there, because, for the first time in my life, I truly believed that I did. The maitre d' led me to a table with a stunning view of the ocean, and as I sipped my perfectly made martini, I let the sound of laughter and clinking glasses wash over me like a lullaby. The food was exquisite, the kind that melted in your mouth and made you close your eyes just to savor the experience. The waitstaff treated me with the same warmth and attentiveness they gave to the couples and families around me, not once making me feel like I was out of place for being alone. That, I realized, was the beauty of this here. No one saw me as an afterthought. No one assumed I would be busy or forgot to invite me. Here, I was simply a woman enjoying her own company, and for the first time, that was enough. I took pictures not for anyone else, not to prove anything, but because I wanted to remember this feeling. The golden light on my skin, the delicate way the dessert fork rested on my plate, the way the ocean looked under the glow of the moon. It wasn't until later, curled up in bed with a satisfied smile and a pleasantly full stomach, that I decided to post a few of them. Just a handful, me in my dress, the sunset from my balcony, the perfectly plated meal in front of me. No captions, no explanations. Just proof that I was here, that I had chosen this, that I had not waited for an invitation to enjoy my own life. The comments started rolling in almost immediately. Old friends, coworkers, acquaintances from college, all chiming in with admiration and a hint of envy. Wow, this looks amazing! Living your best life. OMG, where is this? It felt good, I won't lie. It felt good to be seen, to be acknowledged, even if it was by strangers on the internet rather than the people who should have cared the most. And then, late that night, my phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Where are you? We thought you were coming." I stared at the screen, my heartbeat steady, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The audacity of it. The sheer ridiculousness of pretending they had expected me when not a single one of them had bothered to extend an invitation. I could have told her the truth. I could have let the anger spill out, let her know exactly how it felt to be forgotten over and over again. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled to myself, leaned back against the plush pillows, and typed out a reply that was as sharp as it was effortless. "Oh, I just assumed you'd be too busy for me." I hit send and then turned off my phone, not bothering to wait for a response. It didn't matter what she said next, what excuses she tried to make, what fake concerns she pretended to have. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to be included in their half-hearted, last-minute plans. I had made my own plans, and I had chosen myself, and that was worth more than any belated invitation they could have thrown my way. By morning, the messages had multiplied. Not just from Emily, but from my mother, my father, even Emily's husband, a man who barely spoke 2 words to me at family gatherings. They were suddenly very interested in my whereabouts, suddenly very concerned about why I wasn't at the Christmas they had so conveniently forgotten to invite me to. I could almost hear the panic in their voices, the realization that I had slipped away without begging for a place at their table. Funny how people only care when they think they're missing out. The first call came early, before I had even finished my morning coffee, the familiar ringtone cutting through the quiet hum of my suite like a blade. I let it ring, watching the name flash across my screen, Mom. I knew exactly what was coming, could predict the tone of her voice, the carefully curated concern that would be wrapped around a core of guilt. I wasn't in the mood for it, not yet, so I let it go to voicemail, stretching out on the lounge chair on my balcony, watching the endless expanse of ocean stretch toward the horizon. The air was warm, the sea breeze carried the faint scent of salt and something floral, and for the first time in a long time, I felt entirely at peace. The second call came 20 minutes later, then a third, then a text that read in that painfully familiar way, "Rachel, sweetheart, we were all so worried. Why didn't you tell us you weren't coming?" I almost laughed at the sheer absurdity of it, the way she had so easily twisted the situation into something where I was at fault, where I was the one who had failed to communicate, instead of them simply forgetting me in the first place. I stared at the message for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, before finally typing the only response that mattered. "You never invited me." The dots appeared almost immediately, the little animated ellipsis bouncing as she typed, then stopped, then started again, as if she couldn't quite figure out how to spin the situation to her advantage. Then finally, the reply came, breezy and dismissive, as if that one fact, one glaringly obvious fact, meant nothing at all. "Well, you know we always assumed you'd be there. It's tradition." Tradition. That was the word she clung to like a life raft, the excuse that was supposed to erase the years of quiet neglect, of last-minute invitations, of being the afterthought in a family that barely noticed my absence. Tradition, as if that made it okay, as if that made it better, as if that excused them from having to put in the smallest bit of effort to include me in something that was supposedly so important to them. I was still shaking my head when the next text arrived, this time from Emily, who had apparently decided that Mom's guilt trip needed some reinforcement. "You're being dramatic. Just come next year." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a casual dismissal, as if my feelings were an overreaction, as if my absence wasn't even worth a real conversation. Just come next year, like I was some wayward employee who had skipped the annual office party and needed to be reminded to pencil it in for the following December. I didn't respond to that one. I didn't need to. Instead, I spent the rest of my day doing exactly what I had come here to do, enjoying myself. I had breakfast on the deck, stretched out in the sun, got a massage in the spa, let the warmth of the ocean breeze wash away the last lingering traces of guilt they had tried to shove onto my shoulders. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't hurting anyone. I was simply existing outside of their expectations, and that, apparently, was enough to send them into a full-blown panic. It wasn't until later that evening, when I posted another round of photos, that the final blow came. A shot of the ocean at sunset, a perfectly plated dinner, a smiling picture of me holding a cocktail, my skin sun-kissed and glowing under the golden light. I wasn't trying to be petty, wasn't even thinking about them when I hit post, but I should have known it wouldn't take long. Within minutes, another call came through. This time, I answered. Mom's voice was bright, overly sweet, the kind of forced cheer that meant she was about to say something that would make my teeth grind. "Rachel, honey, we've been talking, and we were thinking, oh, that trip of yours looks just amazing. We should all do a cruise next Christmas." I almost choked on my drink, the sheer audacity of it making me laugh out loud before I could stop myself. There it was. The moment I had been waiting for, the predictable shift from indifference to entitlement, the sudden interest in my plans now that they saw I was having a good time without them. It was almost funny, really, the way they could so effortlessly rewrite history, the way they could go from forgetting I existed to inviting themselves into my carefully carved-out joy like it had been their idea all along. I let the silence stretch for just a second too long, let her sit in the awkward pause, before finally delivering the words with a sharp, amused edge. "Oh, I already booked it for one." The silence that followed was the most satisfying thing I had heard in years. A pause, a stammer, then a forced little laugh, as if she was still trying to find a way to backpedal, to smooth over the cracks in their carefully maintained illusion of family unity. But I didn't give her the chance. I ended the call with a polite but final, "I have to go now, Mom. Enjoy your Christmas." And then, for the first time in years, I wasn't an afterthought. And I wasn't about to let them forget that. The moment I stepped back into my apartment, suitcase rolling over the hardwood floor and the scent of the ocean still lingering in my hair, I knew something had shifted. It wasn't just the quiet, the kind of peaceful silence that had felt so luxurious on my trip. It was the weight of something unsaid, something waiting for me, something brewing just beyond the edges of my inbox. I didn't check my messages right away. Instead, I took my time, setting my bags down, stretching out my legs after hours on a plane, making myself a cup of coffee in the kitchen that had stood empty for the past 10 days. It was a strange feeling, coming back not to the familiar post-vacation melancholy, but to something else entirely, something colder, something deliberate. When I finally picked up my phone, it confirmed what I already suspected. No texts, no missed calls, aside from the ones I had ignored while I was gone. No questions about when I had landed or how my trip had been. Just silence, stretched out between me and them like an ocean of its own, vast and unyielding. But it wasn't the absence of words that caught my attention, it was what had replaced them. Emily had posted her usual collection of holiday pictures, the carefully curated snapshots of a Christmas that had gone on perfectly without me. The tree, twinkling with ornaments I had never seen before. The dinner table, set with plates I had never eaten from. The whole family, smiling in coordinated outfits, a picture of warmth and unity. And there, beneath it, the caption that said everything without saying anything at all. "Family is everything." I stared at the words for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the screen, debating whether or not to let them affect me. But the truth was, they already had. Because it wasn't just a post. It was a message. It was a pointed, passive-aggressive declaration, a carefully placed reminder that they had moved on, that my absence hadn't left a dent, that I had been so effortlessly replaced in a celebration I had never truly belonged to in the first place. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I simply set my phone down and exhaled slowly, letting the realization settle in my bones, heavy but not unexpected. They weren't hurt because I had been gone. They weren't sad because they had missed me. They were angry because I had made a choice they hadn't controlled, because I had stepped outside the carefully constructed narrative where I was always supposed to be the one waiting for them to remember me. They weren't mourning my absence. They were punishing me for it. The voicemail came later that afternoon, Mom's voice soft but rehearsed, dripping with the kind of forced concern that had always made my skin crawl. "Rachel, honey, I just wanted to say that you really need to apologize to your sister. She felt really hurt by all of this, and I think it would mean a lot if you reached out to make things right." I almost laughed at how predictable it was, how smoothly they had shifted the blame onto me, how easily they had rewritten the story so that Emily was the victim and I was the one who had something to apologize for. I let the message play out, let the words wash over me, let the weight of expectations settle in the space where guilt used to live, but found that it no longer fit, no longer stuck to my ribs the way it used to. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel regret. If anything, I felt something close to amusement, the bitter kind, the kind that came from finally seeing a game for what it was after years of playing along. I didn't call back. I didn't text an apology. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up a travel site, and started planning my next trip. If they wanted to be petty, if they wanted to make a statement, then so would I. Paris in the spring. A mountain retreat in the summer. Maybe something extravagant for my birthday, something they would see, something they couldn't ignore. Not to prove anything, not to make them jealous, but because I had finally tasted the kind of life that wasn't dictated by their whims, and I wasn't about to give that up just because they had suddenly decided to pay attention. The more I planned, the more I posted, the more the reactions from my family began to shift. At first, there were the lingering attempts at guilt, the casual mentions of how they had missed me, how they had wished I had been there, as if it had been my choice to be excluded in the first place. Then came the passive-aggressive comments, the ones buried under forced politeness. Oh wow, must be nice to travel so much. Guess some of us don't have that kind of free time. But eventually, the mask slipped, the facade cracked, and the messages turned into something sharper, something laced with resentment. Emily, finally losing patience, sent a text that was short and clipped, her frustration bleeding through every word. We get it. You're happy without us. You don't have to rub it in. And that was the moment it all became clear, the moment the last piece of the puzzle finally clicked into place. It wasn't that they missed me. It wasn't that they wanted me back. It was that they had expected me to stay in my place, to keep waiting, to keep playing the role they had written for me without complaint. It had never been about love. It had been about control. Turns out, people don't like when you stop playing the role they wrote for you. Almost exactly 1 year had passed since the last Christmas they had forgotten me, and if I was being honest, I had never felt lighter in my entire life. In the months since that cruise, I had discovered something that should have been obvious all along, something so simple yet so powerful that I almost laughed at how long it had taken me to see it for what it was. I didn't need them. I didn't need their half-hearted invitations, their backhanded compliments, their last-minute inclusions that always made me feel like an afterthought. I didn't need their approval or their guilt trips or their carefully disguised attempts to pull me back into a role I had never asked to play. I had spent far too many years waiting for people to act like they cared, and the moment I stopped waiting, I realized how little their absence actually affected me. Since that first trip, I had made it a point to keep going, to keep exploring, to keep proving to myself that life didn't need to revolve around people who barely noticed when I was gone. Paris in the spring had been everything I had dreamed it would be: morning walks along the Seine, buttery croissants that melted in my mouth, quiet afternoons spent watching the world move around me from a cafe table where no one expected anything from me. Summer in the mountains had been a different kind of beauty, filled with crisp air and silent trails, and a kind of peace I had never known I needed. Each time I posted photos, the reactions from my family followed the same pattern: curiosity, bitterness, and finally, silence. They had stopped pretending to care, which suited me just fine, because I had long since stopped pretending that I needed them to. That was why, when the message finally came, I almost didn't recognize the number flashing on my screen, almost forgot the familiar tone of forced casualness that accompanied every conversation with my mother. So, are you coming to Christmas this time? The words sat there, blinking at me like a challenge, as if she were daring me to step back into the space I had so carefully removed myself from. It wasn't an apology, wasn't an acknowledgement of the way they had treated me, wasn't even an attempt at making things right. It was just another assumption, another expectation, another way of pulling me back into something I had spent a year unlearning. For a brief second, I considered responding, considered typing out some polite but firm refusal, considered spelling it out for them one final time. But then I thought, what was the point? They had already decided how they wanted to see me, had already rewritten the story in a way that made them the victims of my absence instead of the cause of it. Nothing I said would change that. Nothing I explained would make them understand. They weren't asking because they missed me. They were asking because they wanted me to fall back in line. So instead of responding, I opened my social media, found the perfectly timed countdown I had already set up, and hit post. 2 weeks until Bali. Can't wait. No explanation, no further details, just the simple, undeniable truth that I was already moving forward while they were still trying to drag me back into the past. It took less than an hour before Emily finally broke, her name flashing across my notifications with a message so sharp and bitter I could almost hear the annoyance in her voice. Wow! I hope you enjoy being alone. It was meant to sting, meant to make me second-guess myself, meant to be the final jab that would send me scrambling for some kind of reconciliation. But instead of anger, I felt something else, something calm, something steady, something that felt suspiciously like closure. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of everything I had carried for so long settle one final time before I let it go completely. Then I typed out the only response that truly mattered, the only one that was real, the only one that had ever been true. Oh, I do. And I meant it. I meant it as I packed my bags once again, as I double-checked my flight itinerary, as I shut off my notifications and let the last remnants of guilt slip through my fingers like sand. I meant it as I walked through the airport, as I stepped onto the plane, as I settled into my seat with a book in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other. I meant it as I opened my phone one final time, scrolled through the endless, empty messages from a family that had only cared when they realized I had stopped waiting, and finally, with one swift motion, silenced the family group chat permanently. I used to think family meant putting up with being forgotten. I used to think love was something you had to chase, something you had to earn, something that came with conditions and compromises and quiet acceptance of the spaces where you didn't quite fit. I used to think respect was something given freely, something expected, something automatic. But I had learned something far more valuable in the past year, something I wished I had known a long time ago. Funny thing about respect, it's never really given. It's taken.